Two women were abducted at gunpoint. They survived, but have you ever wondered how you'd react in that situation? We'll give you some tips to avoid dangerous situations.
Hello, I'm Lonn Bakey.
And I'm Mike Shortreed, filling in for Carrie Crotty.
It's good to have you here, Mike. Now, I had the pleasure of doing a little polar plunging with you in Minneapolis.
Correct.
I think it was below zero.
It was zero.
It felt like below zero.
Yes, indeed.
But you've been doing it quite a bit. So can you tell me a little bit about how much you've been doing and why?
I am the state chairperson for all the polar plunges for the law enforcement torch run here in the state of Minnesota. Work directly or volunteer directly with Special Olympics Minnesota. I actually began my plunge season in late December, just before Christmas. I actually traveled up to Anchorage, Alaska, and plunged at the Alaska Polar Plunge for Special Olympics Alaska as well. I was in charge of, or one of the chairpersons of the White Bear Lake plunge here in White Bear Lake, and then throughout the 8-week plunge season for Special Olympics Minnesota, I actually went to a different plunge every week. I actually completed 5 plunges throughout the season as well.
Now, in January, it was like 12 degrees, and in March, when I had the pleasure, it was zero, as you say.
Correct.
What was up with that?
You know, you can never predict the weather. You know, it's kind of amazing, but the best plunge we had was actually the last one of the season. Number one, it was the last plunge of the season up in Grand Rapids this past weekend, but it was about 27 degrees outside, and it was almost like a summer day compared to what we were used to throughout the whole season.
Now, have you had the people ask you this question that if the water is 25 degrees and it's zero out, then when you hop in the water, it's going to feel warm? Is that true?
I believe certain people try to put that misconception into your mind. Cold water is cold water, and there's nothing you can really do to change that. If it's 0 degrees outside, the water is still cold. If it's 25 degrees outside, the water is still cold. Yeah. So
I just say the people who say that should help us and jump with us, right?
I believe that's a true statement, yes.
Well, I want to thank you for all you've done. I know you work hard on that. And
well, thank you for participating this year, and we look forward to your future assistance in that as well.
And we'll get some of our viewers to join us next year, hopefully.
Very nice.
Maplewood and North St. Paul police are still investigating 2 carjackings which happened about 30 minutes apart. In both cases, a man got into the passenger seat of the car and threatened to rape the woman.
The first woman was leaving the Polar Ice Arena around 7:30 at night when a man dressed in black jumped into her car's passenger seat. He pointed a gun at her, told her to drive, and said they were going to have sex. Eventually, she was able to get out of the car and run.
About 30 minutes later, a woman who was leaving the LA Fitness in Maplewood got into her car when a man entered the passenger side door. He ordered the victim to drive and told her he planned to rape her. She began talking with the suspect, and eventually, he got out of the car at a stoplight. The suspect is described as a white male, approximately 30 to 40 years old, wearing a black ski mask, dark-colored pants, and light-colored surgical gloves.
Anyone with information is asked to call the police department, or you can send an anonymous tip via text to tip 411.
So you can't control everything that happens to you, but you can practice some safety measures to help you survive. We're going to take this opportunity to discuss some questions that apply to both men and women. So Mike, I think it's important if we can try to discuss some ways to help prevent abductions. Do you have some safety tips?
I think there's a fair amount of things that anybody can do. It's not just females or males. I mean, it's everybody in the general populace, needs to be very conscientious of their surroundings. In both of these cases, the North St. Paul case and the Maplewood case, the women were walking to their car in brightly lit parking lots. Where they were parked, it wasn't a very strange thing. It just so happened that they were the only ones there. One of the things from a police perspective that we always recommend anybody who's walking to their vehicle is, if at all possible, try to get an escort. I mean, walk in groups. I mean, if you're leaving a place like an ice arena or you're leaving a place like a fitness club, inevitably somebody else will probably be walking out at the same time as you. So it's probably in your best interest to try to walk out as a group. That way everybody's keeping an eye on each other. We always suggest that everybody has their keys readily available. Most people have the key fobs where they can get their doors open ahead of time so they don't have to try to struggle with the key in the lock of the door itself. Obviously the majority of the people nowadays carry cell phones with them. Having that readily available is always a good thing,
And speaking of keys, I've always told people, especially the females that I know, is to carry the key so that the key is actually sticking out from...
As a form of a weapon.
Yes.
Yep.
And you need to be willing to use that key if need
Correct.
be. And another thing is, you talked about getting to your car with the key fob. Once that door is opened, they should automatically be hitting the lock button.
Without a doubt.
So as soon as they get in that car, they shut that door and they're secured in that vehicle.
Right, absolutely.
Because in both of the situations we talked about, he
Those
came
doors
in
were unlocked.
he came in the passenger's
Right.
doors. So as soon as that car door is open, lock it, get in, and now you're secured.
Absolutely. I mean, and those are just some of the examples. I mean, the big thing obviously is being cognizant of your surroundings. I mean, when you're walking through a parking lot, I mean, large occupied vehicles tend to scare people. I mean, whether it's a van or whether it's a pickup truck, and there's really no reason why people should be parked there for just sitting in the lot. It's almost like they're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
All the more reason that we really encourage people to walk out as a group. There's strength in numbers, and if two people walk out versus one person to their own vehicle, they can kind of use each other as an assistant
Right.
to get them to their vehicle.
And then also, with people ask me about pepper spray. If you're willing to use it, then I think it's something that is good to carry. But just make sure you're not getting it used against you if you're going to do that.
Along that lines too, I mean, when you talk about being willing to use it, I mean, some of the other things from a law enforcement perspective, I mean, there's plenty of self-defense courses out there for people to take. That'll give you more of an understanding of what it is you need to use. I mean, whether you use your keys, whether you use a chemical spray, the reality of it is you just need to be cognizant of what is readily available to you.
And to just kind of wrap it up, I know some people ask, hey, should I stop and render help to somebody who's on the side of the road? And I've always told them, roll up to the situation, roll down your window slightly, ask them if you need to call the police for them, stay in your vehicle. And don't let them use your phone. You can call for them.
Right.
You do not want them taking your phone.
And also, if you don't feel comfortable stopping, call.
Call for
I
them
mean,
and just keep going.
And again, the majority of the people have phones nowadays with them. So,
Right. Well, I think that helps a little bit.
absolutely.
All right.
Maplewood Police are looking for the woman in these pictures involved in a theft at Super America. The woman arrived and left the store on Wiper Avenue in a maroon Chevrolet minivan.
There is a second suspect, a white male in his late 30s or early 40s, who was with the woman and also stole some items. Both suspects frequent the gas station.
If you have any information, call the Maplewood Police Department or submit an anonymous tip. Your child's safety in the car depends on you, but chances are you're using safety seats incorrectly.
Here's a look at a car seat clinic at the Maplewood Fire Department, explaining the importance of securing your kids correctly.
And you've done this before with babies? Yeah.
In Minnesota, 3 out of 4 child car seats are used incorrectly.
What's helpful about this is that it helps keep their rump back into the seat.
And since car crashes are the leading killer of children under 14,
We want these harness straps to be at the level of the shoulder.
using them properly is imperative. Injury prevention coordinator at Regents Hospital, Shanette Doggett, says they began a car seat program 6 years ago and partner with local safety agencies to educate parents and caregivers.
And the latch system is not any safer than the seatbelt systems.
They hold 2 clinics a month, and recently the clinic came to the Maplewood Fire Department.
We find that the parents and the caregivers that come to our clinics are very grateful and really appreciate the help that they've received, and they've all kind of left with some new knowledge.
It's the law in Minnesota for children to ride in a booster seat upon outgrowing a forward-facing harness restraint. Children should ride in a booster until they're 4'9" or at least 8 years old. A 2011 Department of Public Safety survey revealed only 64% of parents and caregivers placed children in booster seats. Between 2008 and 2012, 10 children were killed in Minnesota and only 2 were properly restrained. Of the more than 2,000 children injured, less than half were properly restrained.
We just really feel like our goal is to make kids safer. And so every clinic that we hold, we've got technicians that volunteer their time to come to these clinics and work with those parents and caregivers. And it's really all about the kids.
For more information on car seat safety or to request a clinic in your community, call or email Regions. We're going to take a short break, but first,
Community Service Officer Nick Kreckler gives us the skinny on thin ice.
We've gotten what we asked for, warmer weather. And with warmer temperatures come warnings about thin ice. Ice is never 100% safe. Officials caution people about traveling on the lakes, even in the heart of winter. Temperature, snow cover, currents, springs, and rough fish all affect the safety of ice. It's rarely the same thickness over a single body of water. It can be several feet thick in one area and just 1 inch thick a few yards away. Since new, clear ice is twice as strong as white ice or snow ice, you should double the recommended thickness according to safety guidelines. If a lake has 2 inches of ice or less, stay off. DNR officials say 4 inches is needed for ice fishing or other activities on foot. They recommend 5 inches for snowmobiles or ATVs, and over a foot for a medium-sized truck. People do fall through the ice and die during April months in Minnesota, so be extra cautious and thoughtful about the consequences of venturing onto lakes. You're not just putting yourself in danger, but anyone who comes to rescue you. I'm Nick Kreckler. Stay safe and dry this spring, and I'll see you next time.
Extra DWI enforcement is now being served on Minnesota roads. Don't be what you drink.
we live in a world with good people, but unfortunately, there are a lot of bad ones looking to victimize children.
We can't be around our kids 24/7. As parents in a society, we must understand how we can prepare our children for potential predators.
Allison Fay is the program coordinator for the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center, and she's here to help us out.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you tell me the difference or the correlation between the Gunderson and the Jacob Wetterling Foundation?
Well, the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center, we merged with a larger nonprofit called the National Child Protection Training Center a few years ago. Then this year, both of our nonprofits merged in with Gunderson Health Systems out of La Crosse. They're looking at the fact that child abuse is a public health issue, and that if we can help prevent child abuse, we raise healthier adults. And so we are working now under the auspices of the hospital to do that educational work and to launch our program more into a national program.
Okay.
Allison, it's a parent's worst nightmare to have something like an abduction or a sexual assault happen to their child. How common is the abuse of children?
It's hard to get an exact read on the rates for sexual abuse of children because how we know most kids don't tell. And even those that do tell, not all of them get reported to law enforcement. And so the most current statistic, David Fingelhor last year did a phone interview with his colleagues for 15 to 17-year-olds and asked them in the phone interview, have you been assaulted? And the rates were 26% for females and about 5% for males. But these are kids who are self-disclosing. So we know that's probably the baseline. It could be more than that. With missing children, it really depends. We have about 2,200 reported in the police computer into NCIC every day as missing, but only about 115 a year of those are the stereotypical kidnappings. A lot of it is kids who've run away from home, kids tossed out of their home, family abductions, endangered runaways.
Is it more common for kids to be harmed by someone they know or a stranger?
The rates of sexual abuse is that kids are almost always sexually victimized by someone that they know, either a friend, an acquaintance, someone in their family. About 7% of the time, the sexual abuse is by a non-family member that they don't know. So for that reason, we do not teach children stranger danger at all, because it doesn't really work. What we teach them instead is pay attention to any person who's asking you to break your safety rules, and pay attention to any person who's giving you that gut instinct uh-oh feeling. And if someone's asking you to break your rule, like keeping a secret from the person taking care of you, the child then is supposed to go and tell the parent that this person's trying to get me to break my rules. So it doesn't matter, do I know this person or not? It's how is this person making me feel?
Allison, we're all familiar with the Jacob Wetterling case. Is that kind of an unusual case, or do the stranger abductions happen more often than we really know about?
The non-family abductions are very rare. There's about 115 a year of the stereotypical kidnapping cases. When they happen, they are everywhere, and that's the way that it should be. I mean,
Right.
Whenever any child or adult goes missing, family members want everyone to be looking for them. And with Jacob's case, Minnesota latched onto his face, latched onto his story, and they continue to hold his case in their hearts. We continue to get leads. It continues to be an open and active investigation. And so we're thankful for that. There are still answers out there that we need to find, and we look forward to the person who knows what happened to come forward. But in almost all of our cases, it isn't the stereotypical kidnapping. It's often a child who runs away from home, and a lot of times those kids are in grave danger as well, especially the more naive they are. The people who approach them their first 24 hours of being on the run, they can get caught up in sex trafficking and some of those other really scary situations that we see in our cases.
Okay.
What's the best way a parent can get involved to help their children?
Consistent conversations. Parents will say, at what age do I have the talk? And kids have very different questions about their body and about prevention when they're 4 than what they do when they're 14. So we talk about on our website, jwrc.org, we talk about doing a family safety night model where twice a year you get together and you talk about all things safety. Why do we wear our bike helmets? Where do we meet in case of a fire? And at the same time, you talk about personal safety, you talk about internet safety, and you identify who the adults are that your child would go to for help. We want to make sure that every kid has 5 grown-ups in their life, that if something were to happen, that they could go to and approach. Because sometimes it's the person on their list of 5 who's asking them to break their rules, or the person on their list of 5 who doesn't believe them because they're in their own denial about what might have happened if this is someone that they love and care about. And so we say every kid should have 5 grown-ups that they could go and talk to them if there was a problem, and you keep telling until someone believes you. So until someone helps you as well. And so having those 5 grown-ups and to revisit that every year, along with letting your child know that they, to talk about touches, to talk about these kinds of concerns, let them know that there's nothing that they could tell you that would make them not love you.
Allison, how do you recommend parents approach the stranger subject with their kids?
Well, the good news is that we don't have to worry about the specifics because, again, almost all abductions, almost all abuse is someone the child knows. We have an old video, and I'm asking a 5-year-old to describe a stranger, and he's like, well, he's coming out of an alley, he's wearing a trench coat, and he hasn't shaved, and he smells really bad. When this 5-year-old sees that, that's what he's going to respond to, but that's not usually what it is. It's someone in a position of power or leadership or someone in the family. So we throw that whole piece out, and we go instead with, how does this person make you feel, and is this person trying to get you to break your rules? And it shouldn't be up to a kid to make all these decisions on their own about who's a good guy, who's a bad guy. It's up to them to communicate with their parents how certain people make them feel, and for their parents and caregivers to be aware and to be involved.
Sure.
How has internet changed the safety of children?
The internet has made my job in some ways much, much harder as we talk about the difference between public information and private information. But in other ways, it's been helpful because we get the faces out of missing children in a much easier way. So there are pros and cons. But we need to make sure that young people are learning about consequences when it comes to the internet. You know, if you do use the internet to hurt someone's feelings or to cause problems, to have a consequence so that it doesn't continue. To talk about empathy, to feel for another person even when you can't see their face crumpling when you hurt their feelings. And just talk about the fact that it's not just about personal information that we want to be careful about, it's about our emotional information. Some of the emotional information that young people share can put them at risk for people who are online trying to find someone who they can give a lot of attention and affection to try to get that child, to try to offend against that child. And so some of the really, like no one loves me, no one cares about me, those kinds of things could be a red carpet for somebody who's trolling. And so we talk about, if this is something that you wrote out and handed out to everyone in your homeroom class, would you feel comfortable with that? And with pictures that we put up, would this be a picture we'd feel comfortable seeing on a billboard? We do a lot of work in junior highs and in high schools on internet safety, everything from passwords to emotional information to cyberbullying prevention. It's a whole world out there that young people, it's their first language. And for some of us, it's our second or our third. And so we need to make sure that they are taking ownership in creating a safer space online than what has been in the past.
Okay.
Just briefly, Allison, how can our law enforcement community lend support?
The first thing I think is just to get educated. Yes, these cases are rare, but if you have a non-family abduction, you want to make sure that you have the training, you have the manual, you know exactly how to start. The 3-hour window in these cases are the most important. So that would be the first thing to say, is just to make sure that you have a plan, you have the education, and that to not hesitate seeking out other resources. I mean, we have advocates at our work that help families navigate the system if their child or an adult goes missing. And our goal is to make life easier for that family. And so to be willing to work with advocates, we have such a positive relationship with law enforcement here in Minnesota. We hope to continue that on.
Thank you very much, Allison.
Thank you. I wish we had more time. Your information is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
April marks severe weather awareness, so we'll happily be shifting our focus from snowstorms to thunderstorms.
April is the time to get plans in place for when dangerous conditions hit. Here's what you need to know.
Our heroes from across the upper Midwest are coming home from wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Only now, some have a new battle to fight: unemployment. Hello, I'm Rocky Lynn, co-founder of Tribute to the Troops.
I'm Sergeant Dejan Farrell.
And I'm Captain Ron Jarvie. A survey of our troops serving overseas found 25% say employment is a major concern for them as they come home.
Right now, the unemployment rate for today's veteran is 12%. That's twice the average of others living here in the heartland.
These service members learn quickly. They've experience with advanced technology and demonstrate teamwork, discipline, and leadership under difficult circumstances.
This year, Tribute to the Troops, the Armed Forces, and the Upper Midwest ME Chapter are asking you to hire our today's veterans. Employers, you've seen what these veterans have done for their country. Think what they can do for your business.
To hire today's veteran, visit positivelyminnesota.com/veterans.
Heroes come from small towns.
Now that the snow has melted and we can actually see the pavement, it's become apparent that the winter weather has done damage to our roads.
The Maplewood Public Works Department is accepting text tips identifying pothole locations throughout the city. Residents are encouraged to use the text-a-tip system at tip 411 or 847-411. Simply text the location and keyword pothole. You can also call or email the Public Works Department to report a location.
March marked the first motorcycle death of the year and the second earliest in Minnesota. The rider was driving at a high rate of speed in Minneapolis when he hit a pothole and lost control.
In recent years, we've seen an increase in motorcycle deaths in the state, and this next story is a reminder of the simple precautions that can keep you alive.
There's freedom on a motorcycle. When you're riding your motorcycle, you're out in the elements, breathing in every scent and smell on the roadway. And it kind of gives you a feel of independence.
Training instructor Greg Pierce has been riding motorcycles since he was 25. A self-taught rider, He didn't take a training course until he was 48 years old.
I thought that I was a pretty good rider, but being self-taught, there was a lot of things that I didn't know. So the course can really give you a good basis for safe riding.
In 2012, there were 55 deaths, a 33% increase from 2011. And at the time the story was written, 41 deaths so far this year surpasses last year's total at this time of 20. Safety officials believe one reason for the increase is that ridership is at an all-time high. There are more than 237,000 registered motorcycles and 405,000 licensed operators. Pierce says without training, riders often lack the accident avoidance skills taught in his training course.
In the classroom, you will get a good background of learning about accident avoidance skills, like swerving, stopping quickly, surmounting an obstacle. And we also provide you the basis of creating a strategy to avoid risk.
Pierce says another important part of training is learning that what you wear is important.
The next thing that I would put on would be a helmet.
The single most important piece of safety gear is a DOT, or Department of Transportation approved helmet. He says this suit, about $800, provides a great deal of protection and potentially saved his life.
I was involved in a crash where another car turned left directly in front of me, and I hit the car and went over the car, and I had full protection on with this suit, and I received very few injuries.
More than 40,000 students have been trained through the Minnesota Motorcycle Safety Center in the last 5 years. There are 2 courses, one for beginners and another for advanced riders. It's affordable and potentially life-saving.
It's pretty easy to ride a motorcycle straight down the road, but where the skill comes in is what do you do if you need to turn, or if you need to swerve quickly, or need to stop quickly. Those are things that, unless you're trained, you will attempt to do that, but you may not be successful.
That wraps up this edition of Your Police Report. Thanks to you, Mike, and thank you for being here and filling in for Carrie.
No problem. We'll see you back here next time.